Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you very much for joining me here today. We're taking a look at RSI. This is a relative strength index. It is essentially one of the most popular, common oscillators available. It's one of my most favorite, but it has to be used correctly. So I want to provide this training video to you here so you understand a little bit more specifically about the basics and just a little bit about my advanced techniques that I use along the way. So just keep in mind RSI has been around for quite some time and it is used day in, day out by industry leaders. Okay, so if they're using it, you should adopt this philosophy and start using it yourself. And if you're already using it, needing to improve, you're in the right place. Okay, and just so you know as well, RSI is essentially just an average over the past, by default, 14 days of the the X amount of up days divided by the X amount of down days, right? So that's what gives us the indication of a sell signal or a buy signal based on how high or low it is. Yeah. So let's go ahead and check that out now. All right, so what we're going to do here is take a closer look at the relative strength index. Now, before we get started, just note that I'm just going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the basics first and then move on to an advanced technique that I use personally a little bit later in the video. Now, the first thing you need to understand about RSI is that it's just simply going to be, 70 is considered overbought, 30 is considered oversold, right? So simple as that. As soon as the price comes up over 70, the general consensus is that the price is considered to be overbought. It is too high and it will eventually come back down. Same as well for the bottom. If it comes down below 30, drops below, you will see the price inevitably increase because it's been held down or selling off for too long. All right, so it's essentially considered to be a good value. And of course, not a good value on the top side, which is why you'd likely sell if the price is over 70. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to take a quick look at a cryptocurrency here, which is Bitcoin in this example. And the reason why I chose this is because it has been selling off a lot lately, and we'll be able to get good examples of how to find the bottom and how to find a good entry point would look like, right? Just strictly based on the RSI alone. Now, again, I always like to preface this, always use other indicators in conjunction with RSI. It should never be your only indicator that you ever use, right? But it should be a good indication of, potentially finding a good entry point. It helps you identify that something's going to happen. There's a shift that's just going to occur soon, and you want to pay close attention. That's how I use it personally. But let's go ahead and provide an example, of course, and talk about what that would look like. An example of a traditional RSI indication and an entry point. Okay. So taking a look up here, first of all, this is again Bitcoin. This is the 15-minute chart. And I chose this just because, again, it shows a lot of price movement, and we see the RSI coming down quite a few times. So there's some good opportunities here, essentially. So what I want to note first is just basically the very first entry point that you would take if the RSI was to come up over 70 or drop below 30, right? In other words, if it comes over 70, you'd probably want to just sell your position, and then hypothetically it comes under 30, you just make a buy. You would buy or take an entry, right? So that's kind of the concept there. So taking a look here. If we look up at the RSI, first of all, you see this line down here. That is essentially 30. And that's when it's considered to be oversold. And if you look at the first time it peaked under 30, was right here at about 8.15. So looking at 8.15, let's go ahead and just mark that real quick. This is approximately the line in which you would take entry if you were to immediately buy this currency when the RSI drops under 30. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and go along and mark these here for us. So we got one right here. As soon as it peaks under 30, we're looking at that. Right about here as well. And we got one over here too. Okay. Now these are rough approximates. It's not exact, of course, but the concept applies. So what I want to do is just kind of show you what that looks like as far as the amount of gains that you would lose out on, or perhaps just say, for example, the entry point that you would take that would be a little too premature, right? Because I know we always want to chase the bottom and find the bottom. It's very difficult to do that, but this tactic that I have, I think, really helps. Okay. So first of all, this is what happens if you just jump in as soon as the RSI jumps or drops below 30, right? So you took entry here thinking it's a good value. You would come down and you would have potentially lost out on about 9.7%. Okay. We'll mark the others as well. So this guy here, that is roughly 4.4%. 4.5, and roughly about 3.3. Okay, so that is essentially what you'd be missing out on if you took entry as soon as the RSI drops under 30. Okay. Now, if we take the inverse of that essentially, and we basically mark what I feel is to be a better entry point. In other words, what you want to do is wait for the RSI. In this scenario, I'll just say the RSI is under 30. You be patient, you wait for it to come back and to cross that plane, right? Now again, that's being conservative because there's other indicators you want to use and you may just want to try to get out a little sooner than that, because obviously waiting until it crosses that plane, you could lose out on some gains. But in my opinion, I feel like that is one of the easiest ways to understand this. So instead of taking entry as soon as the RSI comes under 30, you wait for the RSI to come back over 30. All right, so let's just kind of see what that looks like. So in this case in point, right, RSI is under 30, it comes back up right here. Okay. So that's where it came back up. Here as well, really not much difference. I mean, a couple of candlesticks over, I would say it's right about here at this point. Okay. This guy as well, it's right in this range. The top of that candle is there. And the very last one, it came back up right in this candle here, which is right here. Okay, so keep in mind, these are 15-minute charts, so you would have enough time to respond to this. This isn't, a very violent movement, so to speak. Even though this is very volatile in this situation, you would have time to be able to, get that entry point and fine-tune it a little bit better. Again, these are just rough estimates here, and based on what we see, let's go ahead and mark the percentage difference now. Okay, so right here, in fact, why don't we do this instead? Let's go up with it just so we can make it a little easier to see. We got 2.4%, 3.9. Actually, that needs to come all the way up here. $3.7 and 1.76. So as you can tell, the difference here is quite substantial, right? We're talking almost 10% difference in entry, right? So you could have got a 10% better entry point had you been a little more patient. Even though it was a 2.4% variance, that still puts us at roughly 7 to 7.5% improvement by waiting for the RSI to come back over 30. Okay, so we can see these continuous options here. I mean, I think I mismarked this. In fact, this probably needs to be down here. That's negligible. That's about 0.5%, I would say, just a little over. And then here, of course, we've got what, 1.5% approximately, and somewhere in the range of 1.5% more. So we got 1.5, plus 0.5, plus almost 7%. So those are some significant gains that you're missing out on by taking entry as soon as the RSI drops under 30. Okay. So again, just something to be mindful about, because the fact that the way that things are working right now, and if you are just jumping in, jumping out based on the one indicator, if you're going to do anything for yourself, wait for it to come back and to correct itself. In other words, as soon as it corrects itself and goes back over 30, take entry at that point instead. And that little bit of patience will get you anywhere between 0.5 to a full 7% improvement. Okay. Inverse also applies, right? So keep in mind, if you see RSI over 70, you basically just flip this around and it would effectively be the same exact scenario. Only difference is, obviously, you would be, selling instead of buying, and you'd be taking profits at a larger scale instead of, buying at a lower point. Okay? But generally speaking, that is kind of what I want to express here. And just bear in mind too that we need to use other indicators with the RSI. We can't use the RSI alone, and I highly recommend using the volume weighted average price as well as the EMA line, which I actually prefer the EMA 15. I'll have a conversation about that another time. I'll make another video later regarding those things. But for now, just note that if you're taking entry too early and you're not waiting for the RSI to essentially calm down or correct itself, then you are doing yourself a disservice and you're missing out on a lot of gains. Okay? So I hope you found this beneficial. If you do, please like and subscribe. Greatly appreciate that. And there'll be more content like this moving forward. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for your time.